The massive arena on Nexus Prime stood like a giant metal mountain against the purple sky. Inside, 100,000 beings from across the galaxy had gathered to watch another fight. They already knew it would end the same way it always did. The Vorthack would win. They always won. Commander Hyunwoo Park pressed his face against the cold viewing window and watched the latest challenger fall to the arena floor. The Zephyrian warrior's crystal body made a sharp ringing sound as it hit the ground, already cracking from the brutal hits it had taken. Below, the six-armed Vorthack champion raised all his weapons high above his head while the crowd cheered. "That's the 15th species this year," said Lieutenant Deun Kim, standing beside him. Her voice was quiet, but Hyunwoo could hear the worry in it. 15 different kind of aliens, all crushed like bugs. Hyunwoo said nothing. His dark eyes stayed fixed on the Vorthack warrior below. Warlord Kethvar was huge even compared to other members of his species. He stood nearly 4 meters tall, covered in natural armor that looked like black metal. Sharp bone blades stuck out from each of his 6 arms, and his body was covered in scars from hundreds of fights. But none of those scars came from losing. Kethvar had never lost a single match. The arena announcer's voice boomed out in dozens of languages at once. Once again, the mighty Vorthack showed their strength. Is there anyone in this galaxy brave enough to face Kethvar the Unbeaten? In the fancy boxes where important aliens sat, representatives from hundreds of worlds shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Most of their governments had made it illegal for their people to even watch these fights, let alone join them. The blue-skinned Andromedans had passed a law saying anyone who entered the arena would be executed for stupidity. Hyunwoo's hand moved slowly toward the registration pad next to his chair. "Sir, no." Deun grabbed his wrist. "You can't be thinking about this. That thing down there has 6 arms, natural weapons, and armor that can stop plasma beams. What do you have? A pistol and some fighting lessons?" "Maybe that's exactly what we need," Hyunwoo said quietly. He had been watching these fights for 3 days now, studying every move Kethvar made. The Vorthack was strong and fast, but he was also predictable. Every challenger who faced him tried to match his strength or outrun his speed. They all failed because they were playing by the Vorthack's rules. "They use this arena to prove they're better than everyone else," Hyunwoo continued, his finger hovering over the registration scanner. "As long as nobody can beat them here, they can take over any world they want. They tell everyone it's their right, because they're the strongest. And you think you can beat something that's killed dozens of the galaxy's best warriors?" Deun's voice rose with panic. "Hyunwoo, they don't just defeat challengers. They kill them. Their honor code says once blood is spilled, the fight only ends when someone dies." Down in the arena, cleanup crews were already removing the Zephyrian's broken crystal body. Medical teams stood ready with their equipment, though they rarely got to use it. Most challengers died too quickly for medical help to matter. Hyunwoo thought about his 8-year-old daughter Youngmi, waiting for him back home on Kepler 442. He thought about the human colonies that lived in fear of Vorthack expansion fleets. He thought about the dozens of species that had been forced to bow down to these armored bullies, simply because nobody could beat them in single combat. "Someone has to try," he said, and pressed his thumb to scanner. The arena's computer systems immediately registered the entry. Alarms chimed, and the announcer's voice crackled back to life. "Attention, beings of all worlds. We have received the most unusual registration. A human representative has entered the tournament roster." The silence that followed was so complete that Hyunwoo could hear the air recycling systems humming in the walls. Then, slowly, laughter began to ripple through the crowd. Not mean laughter exactly, but the kind people make when they see someone about to do something impossibly foolish. In the Vorthack section of the arena, the laughter was loudest. Humans were the newest species in galactic politics, known mostly for asking too many questions at diplomatic meetings, and for their strange habit of keeping small animals as companions. They had no special powers, no advanced technology, no biological advantages that anyone knew about. High above in his private viewing box, Warlord Kethvar's insect-like mouth parts clicked together in what passed for Vorthack amusement. A human challenger. This would be over so quickly, it might not even be worth the effort of putting on his ceremonial armor. But something nagged at the back of the ancient warrior's mind. In his 200 years of fighting, he had learned to trust his instincts about opponents. And something about the way this human had calmly accepted what was certainly a death sentence felt different from the desperate bravado he usually saw in doomed challengers. The betting pools across 17 star systems officially closed their books. The odds were so heavily stacked against the human that calculating them was mathematically impossible. The preparation rooms under the arena were like a maze of different worlds. Each room was designed for a different type of alien. Some filled with poisonous gas that Vorthak needed to breathe, others so cold they would freeze human blood in seconds. Hyunwoo found himself in a plain white room with normal Earth air and temperature. He sat on a metal bench, checking his equipment one more time. His plasma rifle looked tiny compared to the massive weapons he had seen other challengers carry. His body armor was just standard human military gear. Nothing special, nothing that would impress anyone. 3 grenades, a combat knife, some medical supplies, and field rations. It was a kind of equipment a human soldier might take on a routine patrol, not into a fight with the galaxy's most dangerous warrior. The door made a soft sound and slid open. Jio Choi walked in, and Hyunwoo could see right away that the older man was upset. Jiho was Earth's top diplomat with the aliens, always perfectly dressed and polite. Now his uniform was wrinkled and his face was red with anger. "I came as fast as I could," Jiho said, his voice shaking. "Hyunwoo, this is crazy. The Galactic Council is going mad. 3 different alien species have already complained, saying humans are making fun of their sacred tournament." "Are we making fun of it?" Hyunwoo asked, not looking up from cleaning his rifle. "The Vorthak have killed 17 challengers in just the last year. Not defeated them, killed them. Their warrior rules say that once blood is spilled in the arena, the fight only ends when someone dies." Jiho sat down hard in a chair, his hands shaking. "You have a daughter, Hyunwoo. Young Mi is only 8 years old. What am I supposed to tell her when you don't come home? Tell her that her father fought for something important." Hyunwoo finally looked up, and Jiho was surprised by how calm his eyes looked. Tell her that sometimes someone has to stand up and say no more. The room speaker system came alive with the arena announcer's voice. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all types. In 1 hour we will see either the shortest fight in tournament history or the biggest upset in galactic politics. The human challenger has refused all offers to quit. Betting is now impossible because no computer can calculate odds as bad." Jiho put his head in his hands. "If this goes badly, it could set back human diplomacy for decades. Other species might decide we're too stupid or crazy to deal with. And if it goes well..." Jiho was quiet for a moment. "If it goes well, we might finally get the respect we've been trying to earn since we joined the galactic community 5 years ago." Through the small window in their room, they could see workers preparing the arena floor. Medical teams were setting up extra equipment and making the walls around the audience stronger. This was normal when the Vorthak fought, because their battles often damaged things outside the fighting area. In preparation rooms across the complex, aliens from dozens of worlds were having similar conversations. Everyone agreed on one thing. This was either the smartest psychological trick in history or the most spectacular suicide anyone had ever seen. High above them, Warlord Kethvar was getting his pre-battle briefing from his advisor, a scarred Vorthak veteran named Thekmor. The advisor's secondary arms moved over a glowing display showing information about the human challenger. "The human uses standard Earth military equipment," Thekmor reported. "Simple chemical guns, basic energy shields, no biological improvements or advanced technology. Our intelligence says he is a colonial defense officer with combat experience only against other humans." Kethvar's huge head tilted slightly. "Other humans? Internal conflicts. Humans fighting humans. Nothing that would help against superior alien abilities." The warlord's jaw parts clicked together in anticipation. Still, something bothered him. In his 2 centuries of fighting, he had learned to trust his gut feelings about opponents. And something about this human's calm acceptance of certain death felt wrong somehow. Back in the human preparation room, Hyunwoo was thinking about his daughter. Young Mi loved to hear stories about brave people who fought against impossible odds. She always asked why the heroes in the stories never just ran away when things got dangerous. Because running away doesn't solve the problem, he had always told her. It just leaves the problem for someone else to face later. Now he was living one of those stories, and he finally understood what the heroes in Young Mi's favorite tales had felt. Not brave, exactly. More like someone who had simply run out of other choices. Jiho stood up and walked to the small window. Outside, he could see aliens from hundreds of worlds filling the arena seats. Most of them had probably never seen a human before, except in diplomatic photos. In an hour, they would watch one die horribly, and that might be the only thing they ever remembered about humanity. There's still time to back out, Jiho said quietly. Nobody would blame you. Hyunwoo smiled as he strapped on his combat gear. Young Mi would. The arena announcer's voice filled the room again. 15 minutes until combat begins. All beings, please take your designated seats. This is a historic moment that will be remembered across the galaxy. One way or another, Hyunwoo thought that was certainly true. The noise hit Hyunwoo like a wall when he walked onto the arena floor. 100,000 aliens were cheering, whistling, clicking, and making sounds he had never heard before. The arena was so huge that he could barely see the beings sitting in the highest seats. Energy barriers glowed between different sections, keeping the air breathable for creatures that needed different gases to survive. But all that faded away when he saw his opponent up close for the first time. Kethvar was not just big, he was a walking nightmare. His black armor looked like it had grown from his bones, and the sharp blade sticking out from his 6 arms gleamed under the arena lights. Each blade was longer than Hyunwoo's combat knife, and looked sharp enough to cut through steel. The alien's 4 eyes glowed red, and when he moved, it was with the smooth grace of something that had killed so many times it was automatic. The arena announcer's voice boomed across the stadium. In the red corner, representing the Vorthak Empire, undefeated in 237 fights, Warlord Kethvar the Unbeaten. The roar from the crowd was deafening. The Vorthak section of the arena erupted in war chants that made the air itself seem to vibrate. The sound was rhythmic and terrifying, like the heartbeat of some giant monster. And in the blue corner, representing the human colonies, fighting in his first tournament match, Commander Hyunwoo Park. The applause was polite but scattered. In the diplomatic boxes, Hyunwoo could see Jiho cover his eyes with his hands, unable to watch. The referee was a robot-like being that could not be hurt by the violence about to happen. It raised all 4 of its arms for quiet. Combat will begin when the barriers fall. Standard rules apply. The fight continues until one combatant surrenders, becomes unable to continue, or dies. Medical help is only allowed after the match ends. As the countdown began, something strange started happening in Hyunwoo's mind. The part of him that usually calculated risks and made careful plans began to fade away. In its place, something much older and more dangerous started to wake up. 10, 9, 8. His heart rate slowed instead of speeding up. Each beat felt powerful and steady. 7, 6, 5. The crowd noise became distant, like hearing the ocean from far away. His vision sharpened until he could see every scratch on Kethvar's armor. 4, 3, 2. Pictures flashed through his mind. Young Mi's laugh when he pushed her on the swing. The faces of colonists killed in Vorthak raids, burning buildings where the aliens had shown their version of peace. 1. Fight! The energy barriers disappeared, and Kethvar charged forward with the confidence of someone who had never lost. His 6 arms spread wide, planning to grab the tiny human and crush him in one deadly hug. What happened next shocked everyone watching. Instead of backing away or trying to keep his distance like any smart fighter would do, Hyunwoo dropped his rifle and ran straight at the massive alien. Not the careful advance of a trained soldier, but the wild charge of something that no longer cared if it lived or died. The collision should have ended the fight immediately. Kethvar was 5 times heavier than the human, and had natural weapons that could cut through armor like paper. But when bone blade met flesh, the human did not stop. Blood splashed across the arena floor, but Hyunwoo kept moving forward, using his smaller size to get inside, where Kethvar's long arms got in each other's way. For the first time in his long career, Warlord Kethvar felt something he had almost forgotten: surprise. The human was fighting like something had broken in his brain. Military training said he should be on the ground bleeding to death from the terrible wounds Kevvar had given him. Instead, he was climbing up the Vorthack's armored body like a man possessed, his combat knife looking for weak spots in the alien's shell and accuracy that no human should have. In the stands, the crowd fell silent. This was not what anyone had expected to see. Kevvar slashed again with two of his arms, opening deep cuts across the human's back and side. The wounds would have dropped any normal fighter, but Hyun-woo seemed to get stronger instead of weaker. His eyes had changed, becoming wild and unfocused, but his movements were precise and deadly. The human had found a gap between armor plates near Kevvar's neck and was driving his knife into it again and again. Dark alien blood began to flow, staining both fighters as they grappled in the center of the arena. For 2 centuries, challengers had tried to match Kevvar's strength or outrun his speed. They had all failed because they were playing by his rules. But this human was not playing by anyone's rules. He was fighting like something that had given up on living and decided to take his enemy with him. In the medical viewing area, Dr. So-Young Lee was staring at her scanner in disbelief. His pain receptors are still working, but his brain is ignoring all the signals. Adrenaline levels are impossible. It's like he's turned himself into a living weapon. The impossible was happening. Kevvar the Unbeaten was being beaten by a creature that should have died 3 times over. Blood covered the arena floor in dark red pools, most of a human. Hyun-woo's armor hung in torn pieces, his left arm twisted at a wrong angle from a bone blade strike that should have killed him minutes ago. Any normal person would have collapsed from pain and blood loss by now. But something had taken control of Hyun-woo's mind, something that did not understand the word quit. Kevvar was learning what it felt like to fight an enemy that refused to die. Every wound he gave the human only seemed to make him fight harder. The Vorthack had faced angry warriors before. The Red Dogs at Altair were famous for their battle rage. But they eventually fell when they took enough damage. This human seemed to feed on his own destruction. "This is impossible," whispered Thekmore from the command viewing box, watching his champion struggle against an opponent who should have been a corpse. The human's body readings, he should be dead, but his life signs are getting stronger. Down in the crowd, Dr. So-Young Lee was frantically checking her medical scanner. "The chemical levels in his blood are off the charts," she told her assistant. "But it's not just adrenaline. Look at these brain patterns. His mind is literally changing itself to ignore pain and increase aggression." The fight had become something no one in the arena had ever seen before. Kevvar's long reach meant nothing when his opponent refused to stay away. His armor was failing under the human's constant attack. Not from any fancy weapon, but from a simple steel knife used by someone who no longer cared about his own safety. Hyun-woo had found the weak spot where Kevvar's extra arms connected to his chest. Each stab of his knife went deeper, dark alien blood flowing from wounds that would have instantly killed most creatures. But Vorthack bodies were built tough. They had backup organs, extra nervous systems, emergency blood supplies that kept them fighting long after other beings would die. The crowd was standing now, the impossible sight overriding centuries of expectations. In the diplomatic boxes, several ambassadors were quickly rewriting their reports about human military abilities. Kevvar made one last desperate move. He sacrificed 2 of his arms to trap the human in a crushing grip, while driving his sharpest bone blade toward Hyun-woo's heart. It was a killing blow that had ended dozens of matches, delivered with all the strength of a Vorthack Prime warrior. The blade punched through Hyun-woo's ribs and came out his back in a spray of bright red blood. The entire arena held its breath. Then the human smiled. With the bone blade still sticking through his chest, Hyun-woo drove his combat knife up through the gap in Kevvar's throat armor. The Vorthack's multiple voice boxes made a sound like breaking metal as the blade cut through vital nerve clusters. They fell together, locked in their final deadly embrace. Kevvar's massive body hit the arena floor with a sound like thunder. Hyun-woo landed on top of him, the human's weight driving the knife deeper into the alien's nervous system. For a moment, neither fighter moved. The arena was silent except for the hum of life support systems and the quiet whisper of air recyclers. Then Hyun-woo pushed himself up, still impaled on Kevvar's blade, and raised his good arm in victory. The roar that came from the crowd was unlike anything in the arena's history. Not the organized chanting of Vorthak dominance, but a wild explosion of shock, awe, and something close to fear. Warlord Kevvar the Unbeaten, champion of 2 centuries, conqueror of 17 species, lay still on the blood-soaked sand. The human remained standing. In the medical bay, emergency teams were already running toward the arena. Dr. Minho Jung, Earth's head medical officer for the tournament, was shouting orders to his staff. Full trauma suite now. I want every blood clot we have, and get me a surgical team ready for immediate chest reconstruction. If we can get him stable in the next 10 minutes, he might actually live through this. High above in the Vorthak command suite, Thekmor stared at his champion's motionless form. Around him, other Vorthak officers stood in stunned silence, their entire worldview crumbling like a house made of cards. The arena announcer's voice finally broke through the chaos. Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications, for the first time in tournament history, for the first time in over 2 centuries, we have a new champion. The crowd erupted again, but it was different from the usual celebration. There was excitement, yes, but also uncertainty. If the mighty Vorthak could fall, what did that mean for the established order of the galaxy? Medical teams swarmed onto the arena floor, working frantically to keep both fighters alive. Kevvar was paralyzed but breathing. Hyun-woo was conscious but losing blood fast, the bone blade still protruding from his chest like some grotesque trophy. As they loaded him onto a medical stretcher, Hyun-woo managed to whisper something to human doctor working on him. Did we win? Dr. Jung looked at this impossible man who had just defeated the galaxy's greatest warrior while dying from his wounds. Yes, he said, you won. For the first time in over 2 centuries, the Vorthak supremacy had suffered defeat, and the being who had beaten them was a species most aliens considered weak and unremarkable. The galaxy would never see humans the same way again. 3 weeks later, Commander Hyun-woo Park sat in a hospital bed overlooking the tall buildings of New Geneva, Earth's diplomatic capital. His chest was wrapped in healing bandages that glowed softly, and his left arm was held in place by a medical field that hummed quietly. The doctors still called his survival a miracle, though they used more scientific words when they wrote their reports. The door chimed softly, and Daeun walked in carrying a data pad. She looked tired but excited, like someone who had been dealing with too many impossible requests. The blue-skinned Andromedans want to make you a citizen and give you command of their entire fleet, she said without sitting down. The Crystal people are asking if humans would sign a defense agreement with them. And the Vorthak... She paused, shaking her head. The Vorthak want to hold formal peace talks for the first time in 300 years. Hyun-woo looked out the window at the city below. Humans walked the streets with a new confidence, like people who had recently learned they were much stronger than anyone had believed. How is Kevvar doing? He's alive. Can't move his lower body because of nerve damage, but their doctors think they might be able to fix that eventually. Daeun sat down in the chair beside his bed. He wants to talk to you, actually. The meeting happened in a neutral medical facility, with representatives from both species watching. Kevvar lay in a special support bed, his huge frame somehow looking smaller because of his injury, but his eyes were still sharp and intelligent. I have fought for 200 years, the Vorthak said through his translator, his damaged voice making only whispers. I have defeated warriors from every corner of the galaxy, but I have never faced anything like what you became in that arena. Hyun-woo studied the alien who had nearly killed him. What did I become? Something that terrifies even us. Kevvar's jaw parts moved weakly. We built our empire on control violence, disciplined strength, smart use of superior force. But what you showed us was something completely different. You became the fury of a species that refuses to accept defeat even when it means death. Is that why your people want peace talks? My people want peace because they have seen what happens when humans decide to fight. You did not beat me with better technology or stronger muscles. You won by refusing to believe that victory was impossible. The Vorthak's eyes held something that might have been respect. That is not something we can conquer. It is something we must learn to live with. Over the following months, the political map of the galaxy began to change. The Vorthak Empire's expansion stopped completely as subject species started to question whether their masters were truly unbeatable. Several worlds that had been forced to pay tribute declared independence, inspired by the knowledge that even the mighty could fall. Hyunwoo returned to his daughter and his job on Kepler 442, but the galaxy had shifted around him. Humanity's requests for restricted technology were suddenly approved without delay. Trade negotiations that had been stuck for years resumed with new urgency. And in the darker parts of space, pirates and raiders began giving human ships much more room. Joe, promoted to senior ambassador after the tournament's success, found himself dealing with a completely different kind of diplomatic problem. Instead of begging for basic recognition, humans were now being courted as valuable allies by species that had barely noticed them before. The funny thing, he explained to Hyunwoo during one of their regular video calls, is that we're getting all this respect and fear for something that was never about military power. What you proved wasn't that humans are stronger or smarter. You proved that we simply refuse to give up when logic says we should. Young me, now old enough to understand what her father had done, asked him once why he had chosen to fight when he knew he might not come home. Because someone had to, he told her, the same answer he had given Jiho months before. And sometimes that someone has to be willing to do what everyone else thinks is impossible. The tournament arena on Nexus Prime still hosted fights, but they were different now, more respectful, more careful. And in the Hall of Champions, beside statues of Vorthak legends going back thousands of years, stood a smaller figure, a human in basic military gear, knife raised in defiance. The sign beneath it read simply, Commander Hyunwoo Park of Earth. The first to prove that impossible is often just another word for no one has tried hard enough yet. Across the galaxy, that message had been received and understood. Humanity was no longer the curious newcomer species that asked polite questions at diplomatic meetings. They were the people who had charged into certain death and won through pure, bloody determination. It was, the galactic community agreed, both inspiring and absolutely frightening. And perhaps that was exactly the reputation humanity needed, not as the strongest or the smartest, but as the species that would never, ever quit, no matter how impossible the odds looked. In her favorite bedtime story, Young Mi now asked her father to tell her about the day a human showed the galaxy what it really meant to fight for what you believe in. And every time he told it, Hyunwoo ended the same way. Sometimes the best weapon you can have is the refusal to accept that you've already lost. The galaxy had learned that lesson well.